Hello victims and villains, my name is Josh. Today we are jumping back into the world of Pixar's Inside Out with its newly released sequel, Inside Out 2. As Riley heads towards high school, a set of new emotions come in and fearfully take over, kicking the old emotions out as they are a race against the clock to restill the Riley that we all know and love from the first film. I gotta say, I have a love-hate relationship with this movie. There's a lot that I think this movie does really well in terms of its storytelling, in terms of how it builds upon the relationships that we saw in the first film, a lot of the ideas and themes explored in the first film. I think this movie, leaps and bounds, is better than the first film from that perspective. But it also suffers from what we call sequel syndrome. So Amy Poehler's character Joy gets separated from the rest of the emotions, and she's basically racing to get back to kind of restore balance to Riley. And that, in a nutshell, is kind of the same character journey that we find the characters on. In this one, the only difference is it's all of the old emotions versus the new emotions, same journey. It really made portions of this movie with the older characters feel predictable in that way, and that to me kind of took away from some of the magic of this movie. I love the exploration of the new characters and really how this film explores puberty, especially given that puberty feels life-changing and it feels earth-shattering and uncomfortable, and I really loved how this film embraces that. The new emotions that we have this time around are boredom, envy, embarrassment, and anxiety. And anxiety is played by Hawke in this movie, and I'm just gonna say it, she delivers one of the standout performances in this movie, Amy Poehler being the other one. Talk about Poehler in a second. But Hawke not only is a standout performance in this, but I will also say that she earns her place in the conversation of great Pixar villains, alongside my votes for Hopper from A Bug's Life, as well as Lotso from Toy Story 3. There's just something brutally honest that she brings to the table, but also at the same time really vulnerable. And I just kind of felt that as somebody that suffers from anxiety, it really resonated with me. And I really loved her performance. Her performance alone would be the reason I recommend this movie. I really love the dynamic that you get to experience and see between joy and sadness from the first film to this film. I love how this film really explores subjects of not only growing up, but also at the same time the ideas on it speaks to when it comes to identity and how it's crucial growing up and how you form your sense of self. But also at the same time, I love the repressed memory aspect that this storytelling brings. The comedy still hits here, it just doesn't hit as hard as I thought it would. I felt like for the first film, we really got to experience the spectrum of emotions that Pixar's really become famous for. And for this one, I felt like the comedy didn't just hit as hard. And also at the same time, I felt like the emotional aspects of this, the heartfelt, or those moments where they tug on the heartstrings, just didn't hit as hard as some of Pixar's other films. And maybe that's because some of the story beats for the narrative just hit the same from the first one. And again, I go back to the subject of predictability. I really do love the visual aspect of these movies, and I think that much like its predecessor, the visuals in this movie are just absolutely gorgeous. And I also love the way that this film experiments with animation. So there's a couple of sequences, it's not throughout the entire film, but there are a couple sequences where it does call back to two-dimensional animation, and I thought the juxtaposition between the characters of the Inside Out world compared to the two-dimensional animation was really stunning, visually compelling to see side by side. And in that same scene, we have a callback to the PS2 era of 3D animation. And again, side by side with the modern technology of Inside Out, the two just looked really compelling. And I really liked that aspect and how they embraced it. It's also one of the film's funnier scenes is that sequence as well. Let's run this one through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give Inside Out 2 a 3.5 out of 5. I think this movie overall builds beautifully upon the foundation of its 2015 predecessor, but it does follow a lot of those story beats from the predecessor as well. Comedy doesn't always land as smoothly as I would have liked it to. Some of the emotional beats just kind of feel very redundant sometimes, but on the flip side of that, it does really expand the world in new and exciting ways, and also gives us probably one of the best villains that we've seen in a Pixar movie in a very long time. If you guys have seen Inside Out 2, what did you guys think about it? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Comment below and let me know. But let's talk about mental health real quick, shall we? Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. Honestly, I think this film captures anxiety in one of the best ways I've ever seen in any movie. And as someone that struggles with anxiety over the dumbest things in life, I really loved how this kind of captured not only the importance of identity, but also that daily struggle that you go through in terms of affirmation versus anxiety. And sometimes it is one of the hardest battles that we ever go through, and it's how we see ourselves. Do we go through the affirmation words that speak highly of us and show that we have value in this world, or are we second guessing ourselves and going and siding with anxiety? Here are 2 helpful tips that I would like to pass along to you in case you've never done these or would like to practice this next time that you have this battle or are close to an anxiety attack. Stop and do a grounding technique. Grounding technique is essentially where you are briefly meditating, taking deep breaths in, taking deep breaths out, and you are basically feeling the world around you, saying where you are, what you're seeing, what you're smelling, and really embracing the present situations which you are essentially redirecting your focus. And 2, one of the things that you can also do as well is also journal. I know it sounds kind of cliche to say, but one of the things that my therapist had me do very early into my therapy was actually at the end of every night before going to bed, I was to meditate for 10 to 15 minutes. And what that meditation looked like was specifically focusing on every good thing that happened. And so in times of crisis with anxiety or anxiety attacks or panic attacks or whatever is messing up your mental health, stop, do the breathing exercise, and focus right then and there on the good and the things that you can control, the things that you're looking forward to, and just the good things that are happening to you. Emphasis on the good. I hope this helps. Those 2 tips helped. They really have helped me a lot in just kind of balancing my own anxiety with dealing with regular life as well. But if you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, click the links in the show notes below to check out our mental health resource library. Inside Out 2 is now playing in theaters everywhere from Disney and Pixar. Check your local listings. In the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our podcast network. Got a brand new episode from Brilliant But Lazy coming out tomorrow evening. We just released a brand new episode of Abyss Gazing. In the show notes below, you guys will also find links to all of that stuff, more movie reviews like this one, that subscribe button, links to all of our social media, and our Patreon, where you guys can also support our mental health resource and education efforts as well. So until next time, remember to keep it classy and take deep breaths.